Okay. So things seem to be basically working here. A thing that I need to think about is a piece of information, some information that needs to be stored as part of the project. And, or does it actually? Does it more need to be stored as part of the... it doesn't need to be stored as part of the gradient set. Now the gradient set is a thing that could be seen as being distinct from this project. It's the low threshold and the high threshold, and both of them are unsigned ints. No, they're ints. And I will give them a default, which will be 0 and -1. And that has a meaning, or will have, I hope it to have. And once again I lose my save file, but I don't care. Where would I have it here? And alongside the gradients. New project, low threshold equals fs read int, and np high threshold equals fs read int. I could save my save file at this moment, but I'm not going to bother. So just after the gradient set, I read a couple of ints. So then just after here I have to write a couple of ints. fs write int low threshold, and fs write int high threshold. And that's that. Is it? Yeah, so that's... they will get stored with the project. Loaded and saved. Now, the thing that actually controls that will be inside the gradient editor. So I'll need a couple of buttons, and I'll need a couple of values as well, just to store the values as the gradient editor understands them prior to applying them. I also do need to do the bit where I apply the changes you've made. Here's the gradient set that's worked on. Color request target. Okay, yeah. And here is the L threshold int equals 0 and high threshold int equals 0. And I need, I've already got low threshold and high threshold buttons. Excuse me. So, in here, I have apply and cancel, but before I think about that, cx equals 0, and I do this bit here, and I say low threshold button equals new my button self. Now what like I'm calling this low threshold and high threshold. What these values are is, like, below the low threshold, all pixels will be the color of the lowest point in the gradient, and above the high threshold, all pixels will be the color of the highest point in the gradient, unless you have a high threshold of -1, in which case the high threshold is taken to be the highest pixel value in an individual render. So it'll find the highest, the pixel that has been crossed the largest number of times, and say that is the top of the gradient, and all the other pixels will fall somewhere in between. So that's what the low threshold and high threshold mean, but I'm not sure the pithiest way to place them on the button, and I think that it's going to be something like this isn't even what's eventually, it's what'll be like. I am just going to call it low and high for now. I hate to say it, but it's not good, is it? Align sides. Okay, 0, 0, 1, 1. So it's locked to the left and to the bottom. And now cx plus equals button width plus border. High threshold button equals new my button self. I really don't like these words for them, but cx, cy, button width, button height. High threshold button, align sides. Also locked low and high. Low for the sides, low for the left, right, high for the top, bottom sides. Now, these will be picked up in response. Case low threshold button and case high threshold button. In this case, I want a new integer request. That's integer request. How do you spell integer? Null jings, that is low threshold, title, set. This is the opportunity. Set it's the opportunity to have a slightly longer description of what this is. This is what will appear in the box that'll pop up when you click this button. I will just say set low threshold for now. And the OK func is going to be set low t. And there's going to be a function here, which is going to be function set low t void e GUI space event, and another which is set high t void e GUI space event. wonder if I should... I could just inside update edit panel. Let me have a look at what update edit panel's like. Yeah, pretty grim. I guess I'll just make it separate. I like to, what I'd really like, I suppose, is, I think, a little function which is, actually these could be methods, couldn't they? In fact, I think they need to be. What am I thinking? I'm thinking that I want a little method here which is update tease. Update tease void end. And in it I say low threshold button text equals low colon plus a string of low threshold, and high threshold button text equals high plus a string of high threshold. Low threshold equals project. Oh, look, I'm getting this in the right place accidentally. Project low threshold and high threshold equals project high threshold, and update tease, and in here low t equals e data int update tease. And here high t equals e data int update tease. And in here new integer request null high t set high threshold -1 for dynamic. Wonder if that'll make any sense. Comma set high t. Apply button ends with self remove, but prior to that I do a little thing which is like this. Project low threshold equals low t, project high threshold equals high t, and GSet copy to project gradient set. Hey presto. That should be, oops, before I do that I will just remove this because it's not going to, that's the, yeah, the excuse me, should have muted that. That's the current project as it sort of exists in the editor. So I'll be presented with a blank one. But now I should be able to alter the low and high thresholds, and when I apply values they should pop back up when I reopen the gradient set editor. And when I cancel values they should not pop back up when I reopen the gradient set editor. And assuming I have done all that stuff correctly, the project low and high threshold will be there, ready for me to use in the render gradient function. Well, everything ran, that's a nice start. Gradient, gradient. That, well, look, these exist. This, apply, gradient. It's there. Add that, cancel, gradient. Remove that, apply, gradient. Correct. High, set high threshold. Nah, make it 3, because I'm wild. Apply, gradient. Set high threshold. -1 does make sense. I'm too scared. Cancel. I didn't. Haha. Low 1, high, -1. Okay. Apply. Stored. Let's see. More changes. Oops. And apply, and it's back. Right. I want to destroy it all. I don't care, I don't care, I don't care. Actually, I do care. And it's back. Okay. I wish I could edit all this stuff while that was open, because it's nice being able to tuck it away, but on the other hand, it doesn't make much difference. Okay, that is it. I have all the information that I need for doing what I need to do. And now I must not be tempted to just play with it. I have to make it perform the gradient render. Okay. When I have done this, the next thing I'm going to do is clean up the code, because it is really horrible. The least that I'm going to do is break this recursor class up into GUI, the pair of renderers, OpenGL and gradient, and the worktop and gradient renderer. So all of this should be well concealed. Anyway, at this moment, render gradient. This fills this. No longer do I want to do this. I want to do something else. Take the array. If I can get this to work, I am going to try and replace the array with a data buffer. Take the array and write it. And what exactly am I doing? Use the information in the array to select colors from the appropriate gradient, then write the color to the correct pixmap pixel. Okay. So, because I'm just daft, I'm going to make this OWOH. Now, there are a handful of things. One is one is, he said, concentrating hard. One is deciding exactly how I select colors from this, from this list, and how I use the thresholds and the and the height from the array. Because first off, I've got to sort of decide what the actual range of the sort of the considered points is. Because if that high threshold is -1, then I've got to go through and find the highest point. I'm just considering this for a moment, because the other thing that I'm sort of considering doing is creating a lookup table of all possible values. Because every time I determine a color, it does mean sampling 3 splines, or 4 splines in fact. And if I'm going to be doing that repeatedly, for every single pixel, maybe it's going to be quicker if I know in advance how many possible different values that I'm going to use. Now, might that be huge? It might be huge. Yeah, it could be really, really huge, because, and it could be many more than I end up needing, if individual pixels are crossed very, very many more times. I could just make it figure it out for each pixel. That would be a thing to do. I could, what else could I do? A thing that I could do is I could figure out individual values as I come across them, and then when I need them again, if I knew that they had been figured out, I could look at them. I could just create an array of unsigned ints, which I'm going to use to determine, which I will set to be colors, and make the array as big as the highest point on the display in the output, in the array, say. But there may be times when that individual points on the output are crossed by almost every line, depending on how the user sets up the initial points, or they're crossed by a great many of the lines, so it's up in the whatever it is. I've done renders of 250 million lines, and it wouldn't necessarily be 250 million, but if it was, let's say it was 100 million. And I just made an array of unsigned ints. Yeah, that'd be that, and I divided that by 8 for bytes, and I divide it by 1024 for k. Well, it's not well, actually, hang on, yeah, divided by 1024 for megabytes. Yeah, then I am reserving an array of like 1/3 of a gigabyte. Am I? I probably have done that sum wrong. I always do sums like that wrong. So maybe I'm not going to do that, because I can't really predict just how big that array is going to get. And also, for the simplicity of coding this just now to test my code, I am not going to. It's easier for me not to do that. It's easier for me just to go through the array, sampling each pixel. But That does mean a couple of decisions for each pixel, but yeah, we'll see how quick that goes. I will have this thing spit out some little bits of debug information for the time being at different points of this, well, after drawing the curve and before rendering the pix map, so to speak. Before drawing the curve and then after drawing the pix map. So we can see, I can see at least, you know, how long each one takes relatively. So, I do, however, if project high threshold is less than 0 or equals -1, then I will need to do some Pallavas. The things that I need to know are like the what does I need to know? I need to know how much each step between the low and the high threshold advances through the gradient. So I need something like GStep, which is a float, and it equals the float of, well, this is where it's different in high or low. So I'll do this after, but what actually it's going to be is the float of top minus project low threshold. The float of that, or it's going to be rather 1.0 divided by the float of that. So if a pixel, or if an array entry is at or below project low threshold, it gets nothing. Anything above project low threshold it gets what am I saying? Yeah, that times GStep into the gradient. But I need to figure out this after. Here I need local top float equals project high threshold. If project high threshold equals -1, now I just have to say for local I hate this, array entry unsigned int equals 0 until data array length next top. Okay, yeah. If data array entry, I'm not going to call it that, I'm going to call it array index. Array index is greater than top. Top equals data array index. Linked. So scoots through and finds the highest. Could just say if top equals -1 there. Then it says that to figure out a thing called GStep. Then I say local pixel x int equals 0, comma pixel y int equals 0, and then I say for pixel y equals 0 until output height, and next, and for pixel x I can't use px and py. This is going to be really much better when I'm more sensible. When I lay my code out more sensibly. Equals 0 until output width. So I have pixel x and pixel y. One sec. And I want to scoot through. I also have, out here I'll have a local array index. Side int equals 0. Because I'll reuse array index. Here I will say array index equals 0. So starting from the top left and working along, I want to duplicate identifier pix. Well, okay. Maybe I just haven't used x and y. I probably haven't. I'm not so daft as to do that. I can use them in here. He said. Yeah, okay, thanks. Okay. So, what I need to do is I say, I need to do another thing first. And that is local current gradient equals project gradient set get gradient I'm in render gradient. PM. Okay. Right. Render takes V. Render uses V to figure out this doesn't need V. This does need V. I'm just going to pass V in. V is the position in the animation, and I need it to get the gradient out. Top I can't use, but I need V here. I'm using top already. What is it? High. I really am going to sort this out in a big way. Once this part is done, the next couple of videos is going to be cleaning up a lot of code. Right. Now I do want to think about this a little bit, because probably I should draw a little diagram. because I want to make sure that I'm definitely getting the full range of the gradient. So if the low threshold was 0 and the high threshold was 10, say, I mean in a detailed render it would be more, I'd say it was 5. So the low threshold was 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the high threshold was 5. And that is the full range of the gradient from 0 to 1. Any array entry that has value 5 has to return 1. So according to the sum that I've done here, high is 5 minus 0, excuse me, so high is 5 in this case, whether I've set it or it's been found to be 5 by searching the array. 1 divided by 5 is 0.2. So if I come across something in here and find it's 5, multiply it by 0.2, yeah, I get. I'm also going to add the bottom threshold to the sum, so that if the bottom threshold is, say, 2, then suddenly 0 becomes there. 5 minus 2 is 3. 1 divided by 3 is a third, 0.333. The let me think. Yeah, a third. Anything below 2 comes out at 0. So basically, here's where I figure this out. It's where I say I will make another local gradient value float equals 0.0. And here, don't tell me, duplicate identifier. Just expecting identifier. Well, okay, gradient value float equals 0.0. What's it actually going to get set to? First off, I want to say data a, or God, what do I want to say? GV equals the float of data a AI minus, I can't believe I don't have a shortened version of this, but project low threshold yeah, first off it equals that. That's not the end of it though. That might take it below 0, but then what do I do to it? I multiply that by gradient step. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to limit all of that between and just limit, I don't need parameters because it's to be between 0 and 1. So if low threshold is 0 and the high threshold is 5, like in my example, the pixel we've just come across is 3. It's 3 minus 0 times GStep will take us, 3 steps up those 5 steps. And that's where it is. If the low limit is 2 and I come across a 0, then 0 minus 2 is negative 2 times GStep will take it, we'll give another negative number, but then that'll be clamped between 0 and 1 by the G limit, which will bring it back to 0, which is where it should be, as something which is off the bottom of the gradient. Now, seeing as I am doing this, I will just also have to do the check, which is, well, yeah, this is the other thing I want. Local scol GColor equals new GColor. And so now, what on earth can I do with a gradient again? I can get red, green, and get red, green, blue, and alpha. Get color by index. These are what would be kind of like, I don't know, preferable actually, is if I could just if I had SetColor by, or SetColor, right to color. Let me think. I'm pretty much accepting that I'm calling stuff, I'm making decisions in here. Even though this is a thing that's going to be carried out many times. I better think for a little extra second here. I'm going to stick another thing, another method. SetColor void out GColor equals null, comma, the float equals 0.0. End. I'm not going to check that, I'm just going to assume you're clever. Out red equals red S value V. Out green equals green spline value at V. Out blue, oh, I wish I didn't have to do it this way. In fact, there's a good reason not to do it that way. Oh, what am I doing there? Should I close GUI? GUI classes way over here. Sorry, I'm getting tired obviously. Red, green, blue and alpha are locked, and there's a good reason for them to be locked. But I need to do a cleverer set. Yeah, this is what I need to do. Set by that. So that I don't clamp and update the ints a bunch of times, but also I need to do something else. Look, I've got set I've got set to top, but I haven't got. Oh, like I'm foreseeing this problem. If v equals 1.0, set to top out, else out set so kind of clumsy sometimes. Often red, green, blue spline value at v, comma, alpha spline value at v, end. Right. So this saves me faffing around a lot inside there. I can just set the color with the value. Use the gradient to set the color with the value. It'll check to see if I'm getting the end of the gradient, because that is important, and it'll use this value 1 thing to make sure it doesn't loop it. Or it'll just set it like this. That'll update the color instances internal notion about what a color is, and in theory I should be able to write that to the pix map. There I have GV. What are you telling me is the problem with that? G limit not found. You're right, because it's like that. So now I can say current gradient, set color, current color, gradient value, and I should be able to say pix, right? What can I do with pix? Set pixel x, y, and color. Ah, don't tell me it wants a color. ARGB. Right. Okay. Well, I shouldn't be annoyed that it wants one of Monkey's own color values, or ARGB. And it also wants a color. Oh, get pixel, set pixel, color, color. A color is an unsigned int. I'm going to pass in one of my things, ARGB. Yeah, I think that's okay. And it'll have to be the A adjusted value or something. P set pixel ARGB x comma y comma C call AV, was it? AV is an unsigned int, and it says ARGB, and I can go to GUI classes, color, update ints, oh, it doesn't look like it, does it? It looks like ABGR to me. I don't think that's going to work. I think I'm going to get wrong colors. But you know what? I think I'm going to go for it anyway. That returns the pix. And up here, I save the pix. It is not possible for it to be that simple. 49 minutes, good grief, wading through this, and not exactly being clever about it. Let's just make sure that the debugger is running. Let's run it. and see what it says. I am not massively confident. You know, never would be. Running it first time. Oh, yeah, no, sorry. Just had I thought I had to do something all of a sudden, but no. There are a fair few classes after the Recursor class, which I'll move out into what is currently Snapper, but will soon be not just Snapper. Okay. I'm not going to go for that. I'm going to go for 800 by 600. And I'm not going to go for all this either. I'm going to remove all that. I'm going to not have this sort of gradient, because I'm not going to render an animation. I'm going to have this sort of gradient, and I'm going to have the low at 0 and the high at -1. So that in theory, if nothing ever crosses, it should be black and white with a white line. I'll set the grid on. This is a grid of 100. Alright, okay. Well, anyway. Okay. 3 recursions. I'm reluctant to start rendering this. But why don't I just go for it? Static, yeah. Render as a recursor image. Absolutely black. Completely blank. Okay. Wow. Okay. Well, you know something, at this moment, yeah, that's completely opaque, and this is also completely opaque. It would be kind of clear if it wasn't, because the thing goes invisible. Okay, there are many things that might be wrong with that, but at this moment, I'm going to have to leave it. $803 recursions. I can tell that wasn't fast, although I suppose the debugger is running and it's all absolutely nothing. 0 things. Okay, well, at least it's running. When I'm saying it's not fast, I'm saying 3 recursions should be a more or less instantaneous render. But, like I say, the debugger is running, and the debugger is going to be having a much bigger effect on the speed of the renders in software. But, well, it's running again. I've been wittering for 54 minutes, and I'm going to come back next time and make it work.